What? Why are you shaking your head?
You're welcome.
Yo, what is going on? Welcome back to your appointment DFS viewing every single week. Yeah, it's the week 2 Catching Point show. We're back, baby. I am joined by two sharps in the industry, Jake Tribbey. You know him well from FantasyPoints and all of our great stuff, all of his great stuff, and Mark Garcia, aka Hilo from 1 Week Season. He does amazing work, and basically he's found a way. He's found a way to somehow do what I've always wanted to do and make copies of himself and join every single show in the industry. It's extremely impressive. From Hilo, gentlemen, we were just talking a little bit before the show. It's a really fun slate, wide open, a lot of good games, way better slate, I think, than last week. Got a couple notes from Discord, from Jake, from Scott. We're going to go back to the game-by-game format. We had some great calls last week, but yeah, I just think it's going to be better. I thought we'd go by position. That would be better. No, it was a little bit of a... We missed some plays last week that we should have brought up. That's on me. So we'll go back to the game-by-game format. We'll try to get in and out of here in about an hour and 10-ish. I'd ask how you guys are doing. I know you guys are doing good. You guys want to talk DFS? Let's get to it. Vegas and Baltimore, 41.5 total. The Ravens are 8.5-point favorites. Going to be a lightly owned game here. Jake, I'll kick it to you first. Obviously, Lamar, high ceiling. They priced up Isaiah Likely to 4,800 on DK. Zay Flowers will do his thing. This is one of the few games, and I brought it up first, really just to kind of get it out of the way. One of the few games I think is going to be pretty lightly owned. I think there's a few spots here, though. What do you think about this game?
Yeah, I'm not super eager to play the Ravens passing attack here. I mean, the spread's 9 points, which is pretty significant. And since 2019, Derrick Henry has averaged 10.2 more fantasy points per game in wins than losses. Baltimore's win probability here is 82%, and it doesn't really seem like Henry's catching a ton of ownership this week. So to me, this feels like a great week to play Derrick Henry. And if you wanted to go with a bit of a mini stack here, I think Brock Bowers would be the obvious bring back option on the Raiders side. I don't really have a ton of interest in this game outside of it, but I'm curious if Hilo has any different thoughts.
No, not really, to be honest. This game is... So my problem with this game is there's very few paths to the game environment erupting. So you're looking at all just one-offs. And Derrick Henry, for the price, I just feel like there's much better point per dollar range of outcomes on the slate available. The one exception I think to that is a guy that you brought up. We could go to the tight end situation with Brock Bowers in Las Vegas, just because tight end is such a shit show every week. And he's already being moved around all the formation. He's seeing schemed usage. He's kind of the mismatch player in this offense. The problem is Las Vegas's offense looked really, really good on tape and really, really bad from an execution standpoint, just because they don't have a quarterback that can get through progressions, reads to diagnose an offense or a defense. While I like Brock Bowers for the potential schemed usage, it's probably not going to exceed 7-8 type looks here. And that just might not be enough to give you a viable GPP ceiling with them, projected for 16.5 points.
Yeah, I align with you, Mark, on Henry this week. I just think there's so many good running back plays. He's a fine price. Yeah, the touchdown upside's fine, but I think there's just this is such a good running back slate. I really just want to play Brock Bowers. I think he's going to be under 5% owned this week. Full-time usage right out of the gates. Dude looks freaking awesome. He's 4,400. I have a feeling this is going to be the cheapest price he'll be all year. He was 4,500 last week. Makes no sense, this price. So I really like Bowers from this game. I'm definitely with you. I think this is just a one-off kind of game, but Bowers is that guy. Let's move on to a little better game here. Saints and Cowboys, 46.5 total. Cowboys are 6-point favorites at home in Big D. I'll throw it to Jake again real quick, just because I got to take the L on Alvin Kamara. Kamara was awesome last week. It helps when the Panthers defenders start tackling themselves. I don't know if you guys saw that play where there was a play where three of the guys tackled themselves on the play. Panthers are atrocious. Way worse spot here. Kamara is one of those guys I'd rather play than Derrick Henry. I can find the 300 on this slate to get to Kamara in his PPR role. Jake, you gave out a great bet on Kamara this week. Let's talk through Saints side first, because I think Cowboys are just they're a little easier to figure out this week.
Yeah, I would agree. Cowboys are pretty straightforward. I'm going to be loading up on a ton of Dak stacks this week, and I think Alvin Kamara is pretty easily the best bring back option here. He's averaged 3.6 more fantasy points per game in losses than wins. That was part of the thesis on fading him last week, and that fade didn't work out, at least in part because New Orleans scored 47 points, which was just absurd. Dallas also has an elite pass rush. Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence were responsible for 18 pressures combined in week 1. When his quarterback is pressured, Kamara leads all running backs with a 29% target per route run rate. That's 21% better than the next closest running back. So I think Kamara could really get peppered with targets here. He seems like a pretty great option. I didn't love the matchup splits that I looked at for guys like Shaheed and Olave, but I'm curious if Hilo or Graham, you guys have any different angles on those guys. I haven't found many reasons to be excited about them.
Yeah, this might be a very, very different looking New Orleans offense. Last week, the Panthers managed 2 entire pressures, which is like, it's so laughable, dude. And this week, obviously, you just mentioned all the great defensive metrics for the Cowboys. I think my most interesting play from this game is Luke Schoonmaker. We're getting a lot of ownership on tight ends that are priced in his range in salary at tight end. Obviously, we have Colby Parkinson in Los Angeles. There's Mike Gesicki at 3,100. Colby Parkinson's at 3,100. There's Jordan Akins taking over for Njoku at 3,000. And then Shoemaker's just kind of down here being this kind of forgot about man at 2,900. We have to realize, like, this Dallas Cowboys team has 2 undrafted free agents behind Shoemaker right now. So he's a former 3rd round pick. I don't pay much attention to the fact that he only got 30% of the snaps. I don't pay much attention to the fact that he split work after Jake Ferguson left. I think this is like Shoemaker's job this week. And at 2,900 with the red zone role we know for Dallas Cowboys tight ends, I have a lot of interest in him. And I think he's a very, very interesting play because he kind of gives you like 2 different leverage points or pivot points. One off of the ownership of CD, which is going to be pretty extreme, and 2 off the combined ownership of guys like Akins and Colby Parkinson, who are priced around him, where it gets you kind of this, like, if we see Shoemaker succeed, like, it's got to be taking away touchdowns because he's not doing it on volume. So if he's taking away touchdowns from a guy like CD, that helps you. And if he's leveraging off of those other cheap tight ends, I think that's helping you too.
Yeah, I like that call a lot. I think it makes sense, in Dak stacks, Cowboy stacks, especially Dak doubles. You probably want to be running some Dak doubles if you're heavy on Dallas this week. I think Dak is an amazing play. Just Cowboy stacks in general, man. Not going to catch as much ownership. To your point, Lamb's going to be really highly owned, but how highly owned do we think Dak's going to be?
Not very. Probably no more than 7 or 8%. I would assume. And this is a perfect schematic matchup for Dak as well. The Saints played man coverage at a top 5 rate last year, despite ranking bottom 5 in fantasy points per dropback allowed in man coverage. They also ranked top 5 in man coverage in week 1. Dak Prescott, top 3 in fantasy points per dropback against man coverage. That basically doubles his efficiency relative to zone. So if the Saints come out with a lot of man here, Dak, CD, Brandon Cooks all have a fantastic schematic matchup.
Yeah, Saints always play pretty good in the secondary. Last year they didn't have Marshawn Lattimore for much of the year. He has not practiced all week with a hamstring injury. Just a really, really good spot. Really good spot, especially if Lattimore sits. One other note I had in this game, I do kind of like Rashid Shaheed a little bit. Jake, you brought him up. I think Olave is going to be fine. I think the volume will be fine. Saints only had to throw it, 23 times last week to just dust the Panthers. Cowboys played a ton of zone week 1, 84% under Mike Zimmer, new DC. If they do that again, Shaheed always has pretty good splits against zone coverages. Obviously much tougher matchup this week for him. But I do think he's in play for tournaments, especially if you're stacking this game up. I think that'll do it. Right? Yep. All right. Chargers and the Panthers. J.K. Dobbins exacts his revenge on the NFL last week. Chargers are getting 5 on the road. Panthers 39 total here. Panthers are just circling the drain already. It's week 2. Mark, I'll throw to you first for your thoughts on this game. J.K. Dobbins, interesting play at 5,400. Obviously, he split 60-40 in terms of snaps with Edwards last week. I think he's going to catch some ownership, but great call by Scott and John Proctor last week, getting on Dobbins late. What do you think about Dobbins? What do you think about Chargers?
Yeah, it's really only Dobbins from this entire game for me.
Yeah.
He only saw 13 opportunities, 10 carries, and 3 targets. But that game, they kind of executed their entire offseason game plan like to a T. In week 1, they utilized Gus Edwards early between the tackles. They wore down the defensive line, which then they had more injuries on the defensive line of the Panthers. And yet now, like, they can just bring in they wear the opposition down with Dobbins between the tackles. Then they bring in Dobbins to like run off the tackle and hit up these chunk plays. So like it makes sense why he was averaging, 13.5 yards per carry. While he's not going to average 13.5 yards a carry every week, this is a guy who has a career 6.1 yards per carry mark. So like he's fought through injuries, but he's been a hyper efficient back throughout his entire career. You have to go back to the 2020 season when he was a rookie in Baltimore to see him rack up 9 touchdowns on 135 carries. But like, this is still a guy that has gotten the job done when he's been healthy. So I don't mind Dobbins. I think you can play him in unique, interesting ways. And then there's just really nothing else from this game that really stands out to me on paper.
Yeah, Dobbins and Chargers D makes a ton of sense, I think. Just go down the thesis that Bryce is toast. This Panthers offense is toast. Chargers obviously much better coach team. Yeah, I'm with you, man. I don't really have much else besides Dobbins. Jake, you have anything?
Nope. Dobbins, Chargers D, pretty much all I like here.
Yeah. We could talk through these passing games, but I think I'll save us the time here. I mean, Herbert's just going to drop back. He dropped back 26 times last week. I mean, I don't think we can project much more, and I'm just Xing out Panthers here.
Only passed the ball on 32% of their first downs. When they got out to a 7-point lead, they ran the ball 80% of the time. I mean, we know what the Chargers want to do here.
Yeah, dude, it's exactly what we expected, basically. It's why we were kind of fading McConkey a little bit in the 7th round of best ball. Anyway, all right, keep it moving. Giants, I'm sorry, in Washington. I just had flashbacks from watching Daniel Jones last week and legitimately almost blacked out. Man, Jaden Daniels freaking good at running the football. I don't know if he's good at throwing the football just yet. Mark, you were kind of right and kind of
yeah, we'll see.
in all the right ways last week. Like, you pretty much nailed that call. You're like, he's going to run a ton. They're going to struggle to throw it. And that was pretty much it. This week, though, much better matchup. Jaden's still underpriced. He's going to be mega chalk, I think. Right?
Yeah, I honestly, in GPPs, I hope so. Like, he's in cash, you just like, you play Jaden Daniels, you move on. In GPPs, like, this is a spot where like Jaden Daniels is most useful when we can project the scrambles. And that's very, very hard to do. But considering his collegiate tendencies, like we brought up last week, like he has a 30% rate when under pressure scrambler. So if we can get this guy behind a really bad offensive line, if we can project him to be scrambling, and even beyond that, he was kind of like a first read tuck and go quarterback in week 1, which is kind of what I saw on tape coming out of college. So if you can get him under pressure, lock up his first read, which is going to be Terry McLaurin a lot of the time because they just don't have much else. If you can get that set up, then we can capture this rushing upside. And like, he was laying a fat clunker until late in the 3rd quarter, and then he popped in another touchdown in the 4th quarter. So yeah, like this, the Giants have Dexter Lawrence on the other side, who is very capable pass rush. He can generate pressure. I believe he was 2nd or 3rd in total pressures on non-blitz plays last week. I have to double check that. That's off the top of my head. But yeah, like outside of him, like there's not really anybody on the Giants who can really generate pressure. So we're probably, the way I have this game playing out specifically with Jaden Daniels is we're probably going to see 4 or 5 designed quarterback carries, which is, I think you look at Cliff Kingsbury's post-game presser yesterday or last week, and it was like, yeah, we didn't want him running that much. It's like, yeah, we know. So probably looking at like 4 to 5 design carries, and then it's the scrambles that are really going to decide like his value this week. It's probably, if I had to guess, based on the pressure rates of the Giants, based on like his collegiate career, we're probably looking at 4 to 6 scrambles. So his rushing total coming down like 5 to 6 carries, that's obviously going to influence his ceiling here. So that's kind of my read. Cash, just play him. GPPs, I think there are much better spots on this slate.
Yeah, I pretty much align with you too. Daniels was a little lower owned than I thought he'd be last week, probably just because we ended up getting some solid value with Fields and et cetera. But Jake, I'll throw to you for your thoughts on Daniels and your thoughts on Giants, because I think Neighbors is a really strong play. I know I almost said I blacked out about Daniel Jones, but man, Neighbors at 5,900 it's definitely interesting. What do you think about Daniels? To put a bow on that, and I'll kick it to you for Giants.
Yeah, I'm with Hilo on Daniels. Obviously, just a layup for cash, but in tournaments, I think I'll largely be going elsewhere here. Another guy that I just wanted to mention in passing, I think it's probably a bit similar to Derrick Henry, where you definitely don't have to play him, but he's at least interesting for GPPs. Is Brian Robinson, who played on 58% of the team snaps, earned 12 of 14 carries and 4 of 8 targets, despite Washington trailing basically for the entire game. He had 100% of the team snaps inside the 10. If you think Washington shows up here, you want to get a little bit of leverage off the Daniels chalk, I think you could do worse than B-Rob. On the Giants side, pretty much only looking at Malik Neighbors. I know Wan'Dale Robinson is popping as a bit of a value industry-wide, but I just really don't see much of a ceiling with a guy like Wan'Dale, so I'd much rather play Neighbors. I mean, we know this is the absolute nuts matchup against Washington, the league's worst pass defense for, dating back to last year. So really like Neighbors, but, ownership here I think could get a bit out of hand if people are really chasing the matchup.
Yeah, I think it might too, but it's kind of warranted. I was on the matchup point show last night with Brett, and he was basically saying, like, Commanders easily had the worst secondary last week. They just were routinely losing on every single rep. Neighbors is going to win a ton. It's just a matter of if Daniel Jones can get him the ball. Man, I don't really have much else. Devin Singletary projects fine, but I can't get there. It's kind of like last week. The volume will be okay. I don't really have too much else from this game. Yeah, you mentioned Wan'Dale too. I don't understand why anybody would play Wan'Dale at 4,300. I really wanted Neighbors to get some of those design targets. He got a few, but I gotta think we get Wan'Dale, or we give Neighbors a few of those targets moving forward.
If you only saw total targets and you did not know about ADOT, you might be interested in Wan'Dale.
Yeah. Dude, just pitiful. Absolutely. He's like not good after the catch either. He's so small.
Yeah, and that's kind of what he was drafted to be. It's like
Neighbors should be getting that work, and hope maybe they'll realize that this week. But we'll see.
That's what we want, man. I mean, I think Neighbors got 2 design targets last week off screens, but Daniel Jones needs more than that. They just get him the ball in space. I think that'll do it. Let's move on to Colts and Packers. Oh, my God. Malik Willis starting for Green Bay here. Jordan Love is not going to play. He's questionable. He's not playing, though. Fun fact, Malik Neighbors has never thrown for more than 100 yards in an NFL game. We will see if he can do it in this spot here. Colts defense is not great, but, man, this is rough for Packers. Let's talk Colts first, Mark. Anthony Richardson had a classic Anthony Richardson game. That was like basically the thesis behind Ant this season. Yeah. He gets the design carries, he throws bombs, he overthrows a few, and he still scores nearly 30 fantasy points. Maybe should have scored 40, honestly. I don't know how competitive this game will be. The spread is 3. It's a little stinky to me. I think that's more so on Ant's inconsistency than anything. What do you think about Colts here in the spot, man?
Yeah, I think like just looking at this game environment as a whole, you have to think, put yourself in the shoes of the head coaches and the offensive play callers here. Like, how do I want to try and go and win this game when both of our teams are coming off an opening weekend loss? It's like, we are going to get the ball out quick. We are going to run the football, and we're going to try and get the ball into our playmakers' hands in space. So like for the Colts, that's Jonathan Taylor and what? Like, not really much else. Michael Pittman is like a prototypical X-type wide receiver with very little comparative or relative after the catch upside. So if I'm looking to move the football, it's like I want to make sure that I'm getting 5 to 6 yards, or we'll say 4 to 6 yards on first down. I cannot fall behind the sticks because that is where these teams are going to get in trouble. So if that's the case, and on the Packers side, we're just going to run Josh Jacobs. We're going to get the ball out of Malik Willis's hands quick, and that is probably best done through Jaden Reed. So it's like those guys, potentially those 3 names, like Jonathan Taylor, Josh Jacobs, and Jaden Reed, potentially have like one-off upside. But this game environment is probably going to be held down by just the pure fact that these coaches are just trying to eke out a disgusting win here. Like, let's get to week 3. Let's just get a win after bad losses on opening weekend. So not really a ton to love for me from either side.
Yeah, Tribbey, pretty gross game here, man. You got anything to add? I mean, I just wrote it up as Josh Jacobs is going to get the ball as many times as he can this week, and that's kind of really all I got from Green Bay's side.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Certainly on the Green Bay side. We also had someone ask in chat, Colts D or Browns D. I think Colts D, without a doubt, against Malik Willis this week. Our projections also reflect that, and appreciate the super chat as well. On the Colts side, I certainly do have some interest in Anthony Richardson, if only because, he completed 9 passes last week. He ran only 45 plays. He missed a ton of throws. He, on film, didn't look great. And he still scored the 4th most fantasy points of any week 1 quarterback. I mean, the upside here is insane if he can hit his throws. Obviously, the game environment isn't great, which is why I'll be playing a lot more Jonathan Taylor. Overall, I honestly think he's one of the best GPP plays of the slate. He ranked 1st in snap share, 95%, 4th in route share. He handled all 16 touches out of the backfield last week. Someone's going to have to score in this game. I think it's probably going to be Jonathan Taylor getting absolutely fed here. Could also see some upside for AR, but yeah, pretty much the only 2 pieces I'm touching.
Yeah, I love that call in JT. He's going to be really under-owned with Brees just absorbing so much ownership for obvious reasons. He's 300 cheaper. Brees not adjusted off the Monday night game, but yeah, definitely love that JT call. Real quick housekeeping note, I think Josh Downs is going to play in this game. I'm not really super stoked to play Michael Pittman at all, ever. Or, we kind of talked up A.D. Mitchell last week, and he could have had just a massive game. But, we're probably only going to get 25 dropbacks, 30 at most out of Ant this week, and I think they're going to get Downs. We're going to see a little bit more of a spread-out target share for Colts. Moving forward with Downs back. Downs is a baller, man. All right, great game here. Let's move on to Niners and the Vikings. The Christian McCaffrey situation has snowballed from a calf strain to a calf strain plus Achilles tendonitis. And he tried to practice yesterday. Shanahan said it was a really hard practice, and he could not really get through it. So, most likely going to end up on IR. Jordan Mason is 5,200 mark after the Monday night game. Everybody is going to play him. I mean, it's a free square in cash. I have to ask you for your GPP thoughts because, he's going to push 50% ownership this week.
Yeah, so let's think about this like through the lens of what Jordan Mason is. There are 3, maybe 4, depending on how you think of Bijan Robinson, workhorse back situations in the league right now. Like, who are they?
Brees,
potentially Bijan.
I think we're already there.
It's San Francisco backfield. Like, that's it.
Yeah.
So if you're getting a workhorse back, and he's not going to have the pass game involvement that CMC has. He's not CMC, but he saw every running back opportunity on Monday Night Football in week 1. So like, this is legit. Those 28 carries and 1 target. So this is one of the workhorse situations in the NFL, comparable to Bijan Robinson or Brees Hall, and you're getting it for like 2,000 less in salary. So to me, it's just like, I'm playing him, and I'll figure out how to differentiate around him. Have some ideas, but we'll figure it out. So I'm just playing him. He just opens up so much on the roster. If he fails, like, what is him failing? Like 12 DK points. So like, he's not going to kill you even if he fails at 5,200. So the range of outcomes per the price is just so strong that I'm just going to play him, and I'll figure out what to do around him.
That's something Scott's talked about a lot, how the best chalk are these backup running backs that come into these absolutely massive bell cow roles. And we already saw it on Monday night, so we're not really speculating about the role here for Jordan Mason. I feel very, very safe eating that chalk.
Yeah, me too. And he's really good too, man. Like that needs to be said. Vikings are obviously a really good run defense. They're going to be even better with Dallas Turner, but Niners can run on anybody. I think the way to differentiate is just to play Justin Jefferson with him. I think he's going to be low owned once again. Lamb's going to draw some ownership. We're going to see a lot of ownership in kind of the 6K range on some of these receivers, especially Debo. Debo's an amazing play. Projects insanely well at 6,800. I love Jefferson in this spot. Jordan Addison is out. He is now injured both ankles this year. Really, really rough start for him. Sam Darnold looked pretty good in the opener. I just think Jefferson's going to be funneled targets. And then there's obviously the chance here that the Niners get up a couple of scores and the Vikings just have to chuck. I played Jefferson over Tyreek last week and somehow came through. I feel really good about Jefferson here in this spot. Mark, what's your thoughts on Vikings? Just to flip it back to you here real quick on Jefferson. I think you seemed a little lower on Lamb. Curious for your thoughts on Jefferson this week.
Yeah, coming back to like this whole situation, this game environment probably has maybe the second or third maybe best chances of turning into like a no kidding shootout where you had to have pieces of it. So it has to have our attention. So looking at like the defensive tendencies from each of these teams, the Vikings were in too high 83.7% of the time in week 1. Who do we play from the 49ers against too high? Mr. Deebo Samuel. So one of the ways where you can get funky, you can get different is just play Jordan Mason, because we just talked about play him with Deebo Samuel. Now you're getting access to 40, 45 potential opportunities between those two for an offense that has scored 30 or more points in 16 out of 25 Brock Purdy starts. So that's pretty significant. There's not a lot of paths to this offense failing, so we expect them to score points. We can get access to a ton of touches through those two players. And I also try to fit in Justin Jefferson with that, which is probably going to be done even less of the time. Just a full-on game environment bet. And I think a way where you can really be different, this is like second, third, fourth layers of leverage here, is to play that 3-man stack of skill position players without either quarterback, because there are, in my opinion, better quarterback options on the slate. If you thinking about Sam Darnold, Jefferson can succeed without Sam Darnold succeeding, but Sam Darnold cannot succeed without Jefferson. So if you are playing Jefferson, you can consider Sam Darnold down there at only 5,200.
Yeah, he's definitely in play. I also, Jake, I'll throw it to you for Purdy and your thoughts on Niners. I don't mind Purdy with Mason and Deebo. Just for all the reasons Mark outlined. I think this game environment is probably the second best on the slate. I think just Bucks-Lions is so clearly the top game. I think everybody feels that way, but man, I really like Niners-Vikings too. What are your thoughts just on Niners-Vikings? Any ways to get different you're seeing in this spot?
Yeah, I mean, I think Kylo covered a lot of the major points here, but I do really like Brock Purdy. He actually led all quarterbacks in fantasy points per dropback against too high coverage last year. And, as we already noted, the Vikings deployed a ton of too high coverage last week. They were also 6th most last season. So that's really good. Deebo Samuel, just to kind of put a bow on it, is more efficient than Tyreek Hill on a per route basis against too high. And Tyreek Hill would be, if he was on the slate, it'd cost 8,800. So yeah, really love Deebo. One of my favorite plays of the slate. And I also think if you really wanted to stack this game heavy, you could always go with George Kittle. Brandon Ayuk, certainly viable, but I am still a little worried that he's a bit rusty from the August holdout. Kittle, though, going to go way under owned on a gross tight end slate, and we know he's got 30-point upside. So he's another guy that I'm looking at, especially if I'm stacking Purdy a good amount, which I probably will end up doing this slate.
Yeah, Kittle with Purdy makes a ton of sense, especially in game stacks, man. Love that call. I think we covered this game pretty good, man. We'll keep it moving here to Browns and Jags. Jags are 3-point favorites, 41.5 total. One of the most surprising things of week 1 was Jacksonville coming out and playing 72% man against Tyreek Hill
against
and
Miami.
Yeah,
ballsy. Hey, listen, I watched the game live. Tua missed a couple throws. Rewatched the game on Tuesday, and I was like, Tua should have thrown for 450.
Yeah.
We were looking at the same type of thing here. I don't think Jacksonville's going to run that much man this week. Obviously, they've changed defensive coordinators, but man, Amari Cooper going against a man-heavy defense at 6,200, Jake. He's going to be 2% owned. It's Deshaun Watson. I know he looks toast, but I'm kind of interested in that. What do you think about Browns? What do you think about this game, man?
Yeah, I don't have a ton to love on this game. I certainly do like the Amari Cooper call. I know Hilo pointed out in our projections chat that it is a really strong schematic matchup for him. It's hard to figure out how much you want to bump him in terms of projection for that, but at least in terms of GPP upside, I think that's certainly worth a solid bump overall. I'm not super excited about anyone on the Jaguars side. I mean, this is just a relatively gross game environment. Curious if you guys think differently though. Jerome Ford, I think, is interesting as, a bit of a value running back. The workload was really good last week. But again, don't have a ton of conviction on anyone in this game. Cooper would be by far my favorite play. Hilo, any additional thoughts here?
Yeah, no, that's pretty much it. I mean, you look at Cooper, and this is a guy that had a 29% targets per route run against man coverage, 0.53 fantasy points per route run against man coverage in 2023. I mean, we've been talking about Amari Cooper his entire career as the man beater. If the Jags want to run that 79% man in today's NFL is ridiculous. Come on, man. They can't. There's no way they I keep telling myself there's no way they run that much man again. And which is, I don't know. I don't even know what went on. I saw that number when Sunday evening when those came out, and I was just like, what? I got to watch that game right now.
I think they definitely won't. Tyson Campbell's out. He's got a hamstring injury. He's their only good corner. Sorry, not to cut you off.
No. I mean, I think the interest in this game kind of sways, and it has to do with Cleveland's offensive line. They have 3 key injuries, 2 of which they played week 1 without both of their starting tackles. Both of those guys returned to limited sessions this week. And then Joel Bitonio was actually on the injury report as well, but he was limited. So if all 3 of those guys, Jedrick Wills, Joel Bitonio, and who the hell the left tackle is, I forgot. If they're all playing, I think you can feel fairly confident, at least, in kind of hunting for the upside of Amari Cooper. If all 3 of those guys are out, now I'm like Jags defense. Because if you're trying to tell Deshaun Watson he's got to go back out there without his 2 starting tackles again, probably going to look about as good as he did in week 1. So that's kind of where my interest in this game stops.
Yeah, this could be really ugly. I don't have much else. I mean, last week was bad for Cooper, but last year we saw a little bit with Watson and Cooper. I mean, he averaged nearly 18 PPR points per game in the 5 full games he played with Watson. So they just missed on a garbage time touchdown last week. So I do love Cooper, but
one of the
offensive line.
That is one of the notes you could have with Deshaun Watson, is that he's always targeted his wide receiver 1 at extremely aggressive rates. And just to put a bow on the Jacksonville man coverage discussion, the highest rate of man coverage for any team for the whole season last year was 40%. 75% man is just insane. So thought I'd add some perspective there. If they come out with 75% man again, I mean, Amari's going for 30 DK points.
Well, that's what we're rooting for at this point, man. All right, we'll keep it moving here. Hawks and the Patriots. Zack Shanet week is upon us. He's 5,800. At least DK did, somewhat price him up. I'm not sure if we knew. Yeah, Ken Walker got hurt in that game. Never mind. So they did price up Charbonnet. No Ken Walker. Kenny McIntosh, their third string running back, Jake, has never had an NFL carry. I think we're going to get Charbonnet in some sort of bell cow workload here. I'll toss it to you for your thoughts on him. I think Mason's going to be 50%. It's going to hold some of the ownership off Charbonnet. Obviously, Mason, we don't need to say that, but Mason's a much better play. But Charbonnet, I think, is going to end up being slightly under-owned. And it's kind of the same exact layout. Backup running back, going to be in a bell cow role, good projected offense. Obviously, Patriots played extremely good on defense last week, but good spot for Charbonnet here.
Yeah, certainly a good spot for Charbonnet. He's not popping as, a killer value on this slate. And like Graham said, that is going to keep his ownership down. At the same time, I mean, there are so many great options. I really haven't decided what I'm going to do with Charbonnet. I'm curious if Hilo has a strong game theory angle here. Because outside of a solid projection, this game environment is just really, really brutal.
Very
so
weak,
that would be
especially on the slate.
Yeah, so the big difference for me is Kyle Shanahan run game plus San Francisco offensive line. And now you're looking at a Seattle offensive line that came into the season with so many question marks, and they did not look good in week 1. Kenneth Walker was able to overcome the shortcomings of that offensive line. He forced 8 missed tackles on 20 carries. He had 3.35 yards after contact per attempt. Zack Shanet didn't, he saw 8 touches or 8 carries. He only forced 0 missed tackles and had 2.13 yards after contact per attempt. So these guys are not on the same talent level. And I think this new coaching staff saw that and stopped trying to fit Zack Shanet into this change of pace role. So to me, the upside is not anywhere near the same stratosphere as a guy like Jordan Mason. So he's probably, like their median projections are probably closer than we want to be honest with, but the upside is just like not there. So Zach Charbonnet is not on my GPP radar at all this week.
Yeah, Charbonnet is just not that guy. Not that guy, pal. Yeah, especially compared to Kim Walker. Anyway, I thought Charles Cross, Hilo, played really well last week, but yeah, their offensive line is not good. They kind of got out of rhythm really quick. I want to see Geno get in rhythm in this spot. I hope Seahawks, try to throw a little bit more. They didn't really try to throw it all last week. I think they're going to try to, boost up their pass rate a little bit, but yeah, gross game environment. I will not mention the Seahawks receiver who only got 2 targets last week. We are not going to talk about him.
Moving on.
We're going to move on with our lives. Christian Gonzalez is going to see a ton of DK Metcalf in this spot. I'm not super stoked to play any of these Seahawks receivers.
It is the cheapest DK has been since week 1 of 2020. That's the only good note I have on him, but it is a very, very low price for DK Metcalf.
I got one play out of left field from this game. That's tight end Noah Fant. The Patriots defense, just looking at schematically, they're an outside in, keep the ball in front of them, zone-based defense. So what does that mean? They're probably zone man or like zone with a man as far as Christian Gonzalez goes on DK. So they're able to do these weird things where they're like, they can play half of the field in zone coverage. They can play half of it with a man. And typically that's done easiest from quarters. In today's league. So I'd expect some higher rate of quarters from the Patriots, and I would expect that to open up the middle of the field for the tight ends. And you looking back to like the Bill Belichick era, this is a defense where you could expect additional volume to flow to pass catching running backs and to tight ends. So Noah Fant was in a route at a 75% clip. He played like 78 or 80% of the offensive snaps, something like that. So this is a spot where I think he at least, it's like chasing my tail here because we were on JSN last week, but Noah Fant, if he is going to break out in this offense, this is a good spot for him to see additional volume.
Yeah, like that call. Christian Gonzalez, I think he's getting close to being, I have 2 corners I think that really matter. Pat Surtain and Joey Porter Jr. Christian Gonzalez might be that third.
And I hate that the Packers passed on him last year. I'm still just kicking myself.
Good.
Like,
God, he's been so
let's
good.
take a freaking linebacker over a lockdown corner, man. Come on.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Gonzalez and Jair Alexander would have been sick.
It would have been sick, dude.
It would have been great.
Ramondre Stevenson is at least worth mentioning. He is projecting quite well, and the usage last week was really encouraging. 80% of snaps, 25 of 32 backfield carries, every target out of the backfield, 72% route share, which was the second most of any running back on the week. Obviously, game environment isn't good, but it does look like he's pulling some ownership here. So it is kind of a tough play. I was hoping he'd come in at single digits, but if he's going to be 15%, that is a bit tougher of a click. At the same time, I mean, that's usage that commands a $7,500 price tag. So objectively underpriced, but probably not ideal for GPPs.
Here's a fun fact with Ramondre from last week. He gained 120 yards on the ground, 118 of which came after contact. Like what?
Yeah. This dude 11 forced missed tackles. Yeah,
he did it all on his own.
Yeah,
he was the best running back in football last week. Jake, I kind of skipped over him because I'm not paying 20% Ramondre Stevenson, man. Like with this offense, with this team total, like I love Ramondre, love him, but not at 20% ownership.
I would not be surprised if his real ownership came in lower than projections, because I would imagine everyone's going to see that number and say, "Oh no way, I'm not playing him."
No, that's totally fair. There's so many good running back plays. He does project extremely well, like on a point per dollar basis for sure, and I think that's why he'll end up being maybe not 20%, maybe closer to 12 to 15. He's an okay play at that point, but man, there's so many good running back plays this week. Let's get to the best one on the slate. It's Breece Hall, Jets Titans here. 7,400 for Breece Hall is just stupid, Mark. I mean, he's going to be mega chalk. It makes a ton of sense. The role was just bananas good. Basically got every single snap, every single touch target until they pulled Rodgers, and even then Breece was on the field for a few snaps. Jets 3.5 point favorites, 7,400. What do you think about Breece?
He's in cash. You just like lock Breece and you lock Mason, and you move on to the rest of your lineup. We probably lock a guy that we're a pass catcher we're going to talk about here shortly. In GPPs, I think there is at least, it has to be a consideration to fade anybody or be underweight anybody projecting between 45 and 50% ownership. Like there's just so much variance in this game that like I personally find more upside in the pay up wide receivers tiers, like Deebo Samuel and up. We talked about a few of them, but we haven't even talked about CeeDee Lamb yet. Another guy on the Rams that is probably going to garner some ownership. So like there's a lot of quote unquote, or we won't even say certainty, but just like paths to mega volume at wide receiver. We mentioned Justin Jefferson. So for me, if I see half of the field going lane A, I just want to at least look at lane B through Z. At least look at what are my other options of piecing together a roster here. We have no idea what's going to go down. I mean, like the Jets could score 5 touchdowns and Brees gets 1, and then he's like, he does fine by salary multiplier, but it's like probably not helping you win a tournament. But yeah, he has like 40-point upside here as well. So it's just that if half of the field is doing A, I just want to look at the other options at least.
Yeah, paying up a wide receiver is definitely going to be the contrarian play this week, except for Lamb. I mean, Lamb is just such a great play, Jake, but I do like Mark's thoughts. I'll kick it to you for your thoughts on Brees. Just thoughts on Jets, man. What do you think from Rodgers last week?
I mean, I was impressed with the way his arm looked, and
Yeah.
I was glad to see he was targeting Garrett Wilson and Brees Hall so much. Outside of that, I'm not, particularly optimistic about this offense right now. The game environment here is pretty gross. So, I do lean a bit more towards high-low's take that, I think we might want to look at other avenues here. At the same time, I mean, the usage is just so good. So I won't be a full fade on Brees, but I'll probably be underweight the field here. Garrett Wilson certainly worth some consideration as well. I mean, there is a chance he could steal some of that usage from Brees. It is a tough matchup. Tennessee has really strong corners. They just held Chicago to under 100 passing yards in week 1. They played a top 8 rate of zone coverage. Wilson is notably more productive against man coverage than zone coverage. At the same time, though, 42% first read target share is pretty much all you need to know for a guy who's 7,100 and obviously extremely talented. So pretty much all I'm looking at in this game, but I am curious if you guys have anything from the Tennessee side here.
No, not really, man. I mean, DeAndre Hopkins played 27% of the snaps last week, battling the knee injury. I'm still not super stoked to play Calvin Ridley at 5,800, even with all the targets in this spot. Obviously, Jets secondary is just so good.
Yeah.
Just basically they strangle outside receivers. I think Garrett Wilson is the leverage off of Brees, but I don't know if I can fade a 7,400 Brees, man. I hear you.
Yeah.
I think the way, most teams are going to be built around Brees and Mason. I think we're going to see just a ton of Brees and Mason teams. So, if you play Mason, that might take you off of Brees just a little bit, I think, just because that's going to be the pairing. But yeah, I just think Brees is such an amazing play. It's really hard to get away from.
Allen Lazard is getting a little bit of steam at 3,300, and I just want to note that this is like the stone worst schematic matchup for him. A zone-heavy team is absolutely terrible for Allen Lazard. So, if he's going to be 10% owned, I don't know if I want to play 0 because he is best friends forever with Aaron Rodgers, but I definitely want to be underweight the field.
Do you think they have BFF bracelets? Like
they have to.
They probably have matching in them or something.
Matching tattoos or something.
Bro, yeah, definitely. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, Mike Williams is going to play more this week. Robert Saleh said that Mike Williams was on a 15 snap count.
Yeah.
I think yesterday. He's like, dude, you didn't even get him to 15. You got him to 4.
Yeah. He had 4 in the first half.
Yeah. The Coach Speak Index, Saleh's rating has got to be like a -1. The dude just cannot tell the truth. It's unbelievable. I think that'll about cover it, man. Let's get to the best game of the week. Best game of the week. Bucks Lions. 51.5 total. Lions are huge favorites, 7.5 points. They have a humongous implied total, nearly 30 points, nearly 3 points above the Chiefs for the highest on the slate. Jake, I'll throw it to you first. Man, Lions, just so many good angles in this game. I think Jahmyr Gibbs is massively underpriced, especially on DK for his role in the passing game. What do you think of Lions in this spot? Really good bounce back spot for Goff here at home against a really beat up Bucs secondary. They're not going to have Antoine Winfield and a couple of their depth pieces in their secondary there.
Yeah, am I allowed to say that I just want to play every single Detroit Lion, basically? You know, Jahmyr Gibbs, obviously an outstanding play, split snaps evenly with David Montgomery, but did see more snaps inside the 5 and also obviously dominated targets, which is pretty crucial here. At home, Jared Goff is remarkably more productive relative to the road, and the total does reflect that a bit here. I really love pretty much every piece of this game. I think on the Bucs side, I really, really love Chris Godwin. But at least on the Lions side, man, I want to play just about everybody. Rolls awesome for Jameson Williams. Could be a great bounce back spot for Amon-Ra St. Brown. I know Ryan Heath noted that the schematic matchup isn't exactly ideal for Sam Laporta, but I know Brett Whitefield certainly liked it on film. So, I think you can get away with playing every line. I really like the idea of, sort of game stacking this game, using a Goff, using a Baker, game stacking this, and then doing a mini stack from, say, Minnesota, San Francisco on top of it. I think that's a pretty great way to play the slate.
Yeah, Laporte is not going to be owned, too. I think people are going to try to pay down at tight end this week, high-low. Brett's point on Laporte was Antoine Winfield is their best cover safety against tight ends. It was already, I think, a decent enough matchup for Laporta here, but I really like the spot for him. Goff doubles make a ton of sense with Laporta. Mark, what do you think about this game, man?
So the Lions are a really, really interesting study for me this week because typically we want like an offense with a good chance to succeed, aka a high team total, and then we want some concentration behind that, right? So like that's where it's tricky for me with the Lions. We don't have the same like clear path for Amon-Ra St. Brown to see double-digit looks every single game anymore. With the emergence of Jameson Williams. Jameson Williams is probably going to be a better wide receiver in the league against man and cover 2, just based on what he does well. And Sam Laporta, you look at the splits between like Sam Laporta and Amon-Ra St. Brown last season, it was like very clearly Amon-Ra St. Brown is the dude against zone. And very clearly Sam Laporta, which is insane for a rookie tight end, was the dude against man. So, and we have this Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense under Todd Bowles, who played 78.8% zone in week 1. And they send these, like we talked about last week, they send these unique zone read blitzes from zone coverages. They were about equivalent in cover 2, cover 3, and cover 4, which are all obviously zone coverages in week 1. So while like there is a path for JMO to hit, while there is a path for like Sam Laporta to be efficient on his targets without Antoine Winfield, from a schematical standpoint, the clearest path for volume to flow, again, against a team that has Vita Vea, where it's a very, very pass funnel matchup, is to Amon-Ra St. Brown. He is going to garner ownership. So that is a little bit, I was hoping to see him down 5, 6, 7%, and it's double, triple that depending on where you look. And that might change, but it gets to the point where I want to play Amon-Ra. I don't know if I'm going to get there at the percentage that I wanted to coming into the week after I broke down this game, just because there's so many good plays up here at wide receiver. And then the second is like, if Amon-Ra doesn't have a clear path to double-digit looks because of all the stuff we just talked about, how does he? And the answer is game environment. So I really, really like, if I want to play Amon-Ra, I actually really, really like playing him with Baker, and I really, really like playing him with Jalen McMillan. So a Baker, McMillan, Amon-Ra, it's like McMillan, who fingertips could have had a walk-in touchdown in the first quarter last week, and then caught a broken coverage touchdown in the fourth quarter. This is a guy who was brought in, 18.0 ADOT. He was a guy who was brought in to take some of the downfield go route onus off of Mike Evans. So if that's the case, like, how does this game just blow up? I think one of the viable paths is through Jalen McMillan, which benefits Baker, which then benefits the Amon-Ra St. Brown's chances at double-digit looks. So again, this is just a game where it's much more important to think through how these players could see like the slate breaking upside, instead of just saying like, yeah, all the Lions are viable to play, because now you're just kind of throwing stuff at a wall and seeing what sticks. I think you can play Godwin. The logical way to like or thing to do or to pair with Godwin is like JMO, because they're kind of independent, or a little bit more independent as far as their individual volume and upside goes. Mike Evans is always on the table. I don't see the same ceiling as obviously last week with Washington, but like for me, that's kind of my focus on this game, which is very clearly going to draw a lot of attention from the field with its game total, is like, how do these players get to where they need to get to access that ceiling?
Yeah, man. Baker's an amazing play. I think I just want to play all the Godwin though. I want to play all the Godwin again. 6K. It's just too good of a price.
He's in the Cooper Cup role, and we just saw Cooper Cup have 21 targets against Detroit.
Yeah, go ahead, pencil Godwin in for 21 looks. Moving on. No, I'm just kidding.
Let's go, baby.
There you go.
Yeah, Godwin.
Well, that's the answer the whole time. All my spiel over here, just like
just play Godwin. No, 29% first read target share last week for Godwin, to 21% for Evans. The one leverage angle I kind of like in this spot. I did not play Rachaad White last week. I think he's going to be massively underowned in this game. Bucky Irvy cutting in on early downs just doesn't really matter too much to me. As long as Rachaad gets this, just great passing down roll, 6 for 75 last week in a game they controlled. Obviously, we're expecting Bucks to throw quite a bit in this spot. Mayfield threw it 38, or he dropped back to pass, 38 and 45 times in their 2 losses against Detroit last season. I think we can just like plug in Mayfield for 35 attempts. I like some dump offs for Rachaad White, and like I said, I think he's going to be sub 5% in this spot. All right, we'll keep it going to the afternoon games. We only have 3 in the afternoon window, but there's 2 awesome ones. First one is Rams Cardinals. Pretty much a pick 'em. Cardinals were getting 1.5 yesterday. It's a kind of a pick 'em now, but if this sticks, basically it'll be the 4th time since 2022 the Cardinals have been favored. I just talked about contrarian play, Rachaad White. I love James Conner this week. Conner is not going to draw as much ownership as God, man, this is going to be now I'm thinking it through, it's going to be really concentrated ownership at the top. I love James Conner. I think Kyron Williams is going to draw a ton of ownership. Mark, I'll throw it to you first too. Let's talk through Cardinals, because Rams is just super condensed this week with Nakua out, their offensive line being injured. They're just going to be short timing throws to Kupp. Don't really need to talk too much about that. Cardinals are way more interesting to me here. I think Kyler projects really well. I really like Conner. We got to talk through MHJ. What do you think about Arizona, man?
Drew Petzing is really, really good at designing a run offense, like super good, like top 3 good. He's really, really, really 7 really's bad at designing a pass offense. 0 layering in the routes, very, very low play action, very, very low pre-snap motion. I don't know what the hell was going on with MHJ. They were running him like curls and slants and outs. Like, that's not how you use Marvin Harrison Jr. Yeah, so that film was pretty gross. Even though the Cardinals were pushing the Bills, a lot of that was because of their run game. A lot of that was because of the early mistakes by the Bills. This is not, and this goes all the way back to best ball, where I was like, I have 0% MHJ. I was below the field on Kyler, and it wasn't because of those players. It was because this pass offense is just not good. Typically, I think the league-wide average of yardage per attempt boost on play action passing is somewhere around 55%. So we expect a quarterback to average 55% more yards behind play action than they do on non-play action passes. Kyler Murray's last season was 34%. And it was like he was like 38th in that metric last season. So not only is this team like not running play action, they're not using it effectively, because this is where you utilize play action to get the linebackers and the strong safety cheating into the box. And now you're able to attack deep. And he's just not even running layered routes to like access the upside because of that. And so, yeah, this is like a spot where it's like, man, I don't know. I'll be betting on the Rams. I can tell you that much, but I don't like, I'm going to the game. I live in Arizona. I'm going to the game. So I'll report back. Dude, Drew Petzing, brilliant on the ground, atrocious. Like his offense is so bad from a schematic standpoint through the air. So to be honest, like I'm kind of just staying away from the Cardinals and just give me all the Rams.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, Cup is we were all over Cup last week. Mark, I don't think anybody drafted more Cooper Cup in May and June than you did, my friend.
No, dude, 80% through 2 months.
Yeah, dude, I thought I would have had a lot. I had like 12%. I was like, damn, this is a lot. You showed me yours. I was like, oh my God. Yeah, man, I kind of disagree with you on Cardinals just because I love James Conner in this spot. I will probably not have any Kyler or Harrison. This is a better schematic matchup, Jake, for Harrison. Bills obviously just play a shit ton of too high. That's what McDermott does, man. He's such a good coach. Just keep everything in front of you. Rams are going to play some one high. That maybe, Mark was just saying, man, Petzing's all, ISO routes, 101. We'll get some one-on-ones hopefully from Marvin Harrison in this spot. I'll throw it to you for your thoughts on Cardinals, and then we'll talk through Rams just because, Kyron and Kupp are just two obviously awesome plays.
Yeah, I really don't have much interest in Arizona outside of James Conner. This is, a lot more run-heavy team than I think the industry gives Arizona credit for. So, yeah, they're going to pound it with James Conner. I could see an argument for Kyler, but, yeah, it's just not a super favorable spot for him, I think, here. Every Ram is a massive value. When I wrote the early look this week, I thought, man, I could literally write up 8 different Rams in this article. It's the first time I thought I could make the entire article Los Angeles Rams. I don't know how much more there is to say than that. I think it's interesting that looking at the projections here, Stafford isn't projecting to be particularly popular, despite the fact that everyone you could possibly pair him with is looking like mega chalk and a great value. So I think that's sort of an interesting angle for this game. You could do, pretty easy to put together a Stafford double with a James Conner run back. But yeah, pretty much only interested in Conner on the Arizona side. And then obviously I'm eating up, all that Rams value. I think Kyron's a great play. All the receivers here are great plays. Colby Parkinson is, going to be the chalk tight end, but, for a reason he led all tight ends in route share last week, should be in a pretty solid role here.
Yeah, I'm not overthinking this. I'm playing Cooper Kupp on every lineup. Don't care. 7,600. He's going to be 30% owned. It's truly feels like a free square to me. Kyron is pretty close though too, man. This is, at least 1K too cheap for his role. It's just, I think if you wanted to play both those guys without Stafford and just keep it moving, you could do that. But yeah, Stafford is basically averaging the DK bonus. He's averaging 298 passing yards per game since he tore his thumb last 8 games. He's just been on fire. 18-4 touchdown to interception ratio. Definitely I'm going to play a little bit of Stafford with these guys, especially for all the reasons Jake just outlined. I mean, nobody's on Stafford. Nobody's on Purdy for kind of the same reasons. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. We're expecting those games to be great. Maybe they don't have like the upside of Anthony Richardson and Jaden Daniels, obviously, but man, 2 really good plays. You brought up Parkinson. He's going to be the chalk. I don't really want to play a ton of Trey McBride in this spot. I just think it's a better schematic matchup for MHJ, and they're going to get him going. Actually, I forgot to bring this up. Mark, you reminded me of it about Drew Petzing. After the game, I was listening to Kyler talk. He was like visibly frustrated. Obviously, they lost the game. He was pissed. But, dude, he was like, one of the reporters asked him, he was like, what was up with MHJ? Why didn't you guys get him the ball going? He's like, don't ask me, ask Petzing.
That's not my job.
I'm like, bro, damn.
Yeah.
Damn. Kyler seems like a quiet kind of guy, like doesn't really speak out much. Like that stuck out to me for sure.
Yeah.
All right, we'll keep it moving here. Steez and the Broncos. Ugly ass total. 36.5. Broncos are 2.5 point dogs in this spot. I mean, you could not ask for 2 worse spots to start your NFL career if you're Bo Nix. Going on the road against Mike McDonald, against Devin Witherspoon and Reek Woolen, and great scheme there in Seattle. Now he gets to face TJ Watt. Steelers just don't blitz. They're gonna play 7 in coverage and just let TJ Watt eat up. This is a really ugly game, Mark. I really don't have a lot. We've got 2 bad matchups. Surtain's gonna be on Pickens. Joey Porter Jr. is gonna be on Cortland Sutton. I really don't have too much from this game. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, same kind of mindset. It is worth, I think, noting that there were 6 like mobile, quote unquote, mobile quarterbacks that they had started in week 1. Justin Fields was the only one that didn't either go over
Smash.
100 yards on the
Yeah,
ground or score
exactly.
2 touchdowns. So I think there's merit to playing Justin Fields this week at 5,400. I did not play him. We talked about him, but I ended up not playing him last week against Atlanta, who's just their defensive coordinator is just too good. Not exactly the same here against a Broncos defense who is Pat Surtain and then nothing else behind it. So like, yeah, we expect Pat Surtain to travel, which kind of leads me to, you can play Justin Fields. I don't really ever like doing this, but you can play Justin Fields naked. Just saying like, hey, he gets 25 points because he rushes for 80 yards and scores on the ground. And then just no other quarterback puts the slate out of reach. And then at 5,400, that's viable. Or you could play him with Pat Freiermuth, who is, you look at the spray chart from the Steelers last week, and it was pretty similar to like Jaden Daniels and Cliff Kingsbury. Like they at least had 3 downfield attempts instead of 1, but it was everything away from the linebackers and everything to the outside within the first 10 yards of line of scrimmage. The matchup is much different against the Broncos, who are a more outside in funnel instead of inside out. So if he is going to see similar snap rate, if he's going to see a similar route participation rate, it stands to reason that he could be in line for a slight target boost somewhere in the 6 to 8 range. And if you're looking at pairing a quarterback and a tight end, which we know in DFS is one of the most profitable things to do just because their scoring is so tightly aligned. What if Justin Fields, throws just 2 touchdowns and they both go to Freiermuth? And then he runs for 80 yards and a score. Now we're cooking where you're minimizing the things that have to go right by just playing those guys together. So that's really my only interest is Fields and then Fields plus Freiermuth here.
Yeah, Jaden Daniels is the cash quarterback on DK. I think on FanDuel, Fields is the cash quarterback. He's 7K, 7K quarterback who gets 10 design carries like Fields did in week 1 is really strong over on FanDuel in cash. I think you talked me into Fields and tournaments, Mark. Let's go. Jake, I'll throw it to you for your thoughts on
Never
Steez.
thought I'd see the day.
Oh, let's go. Jake, what are your thoughts on Steez and Broncos here? Pretty gross offense from Denver week 1.
Yeah, no real interest in the Broncos side. I do really like the Fields call. He's a guy that I certainly have interest in tournaments when the ownership isn't going to be, isn't projecting for a slate leading number. 9 design carries was the 3rd most he'd earned in a game since the start of last season. And he's averaged 21.3 fantasy points per game, per start, I should say, since week 7 of 2022. That ranks behind only Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes. So I do like the Justin Fields call, but I have an even grosser one, which is Najee Harris here. Denver's run defense is as bad as it gets. They can't stop the run. They were the single softest schedule adjusted matchup for opposing running backs last year, and it really hasn't changed. Their scheme allows for gap runs through the middle all day per our charting team. This is one of the few games all year where Pittsburgh is favored. There's a pretty decent chance they could win here. Najee Harris out-touched or earned 22 opportunities to Jalen Warren's 4 last week. So I could certainly see a multi-touchdown game here for Najee Harris. No one wants to play him. I understand it's extremely gross, but for large field GPPs, I'm a little excited by it.
Graham, I got a question for you actually before you go. Yeah. What do you make of the Broncos playing hold on, I'm gonna get the exact number. 42.9% cover 1 in week 1, which was 2nd in the league.
Yeah, well, when you have Pat Surtain, you just put him on an island, man. I think he's legit. I think he's all the way back. Surtain did not play up to his usual standards, but he got the bag this offseason. He looked freaking awesome. I think that's it. You just put him on an island out there.
Because if they play that much man coverage against a mobile quarterback, then we're starting to. There's some upside there.
That's a great point, man. Even better point on Fields. I think the one thing that's holding me back is just dude, they were at nearly a 10% pass rate under expectation. They were the 8th slowest offense by pace. I mean, it's just Art Smith doing Art Smith things. It's just how much upside is really here in this game? Do we really think the Broncos are going to push them? Man, though, that's a great point on Fields. Probably just hammer the Fields rushing overs for props this week. That's most likely the call. I was going to mention, not that you're excited to play Broncos pass catchers, but Devon Vele got 8 targets last week. He's going to miss this game. It does condense things a little bit if you're trying to look for a bring back on Broncos for pass catchers, but I'm not really going there. All right, we'll cap it off here with Bengals and the Chiefs. Chiefs 6-point favorites at home, 48 total. Mark, I'll throw it to you first, man. I thought the Patriots just played really good defense last week. I thought Burrow looked fine. His velocity looked fine. They just were, they got outplayed. They got outcoached. Zach Taylor's not a very good coach. I don't think that's a hot take at all. Like,
No.
dude, he's so lucky he has Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins to, cover up the smell of his farts because he's just so mid. But man, I mean, I think Chiefs smash. I know everybody wants to play Debo at 6,800. I think the best play on the slate is Rashee Rice at 67. He's going to catch 15 to 20% ownership, but this dude is just awesome. Like freaking awesome. He is in the Amon-Ra St. Round role where they're going to throw the ball over the middle to him, get him in run after catch opportunities. He's going to get designed targets. 6,700 is just a stupid price for a player I think is going to be 7,500 in a couple weeks. 7,700. Rice to me just stands out as I just want all of it here in this spot. But I'll throw it to you, Mark, for your thoughts on this game and what you saw from Burrow last week. Like, do you think he's healthy? Do you think it was just the scheme? Like, what do you think of the offense? Like, I know you trashed Taylor a little bit in Market Report there, I think.
Yeah, I did. And I think for a good reason. I did make a bold call and said that Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Zach Moss, whoever like else you want to name from this offense as far as skill position players, you can throw Joe Burrow in there as well, are never going to hit true ceiling until Zach Taylor is gone. He's running out of opportunities, and I kept waiting. Like every offseason, I'm like, oh, maybe he'll do more of that like Sean McVay, Gary Kubiak shit, like, and not suck as a play caller. And it's not only his situational play calling tendencies; it's his offense. I mean, I would say that like the Raiders' offense was schematically better than this this Bengals offense in Week 1. The Raiders need a quarterback, but like from a play design schematic standpoint, like the Raiders looked better on film than the Bengals did. So like Zach Taylor, man, he just like he just islands everywhere, and he wants his playmakers to win a one-on-one. It's like you can't like go back to high school and that'll work, dude. Not in the NFL, not today. Like it's not going to work. You have to be scheming your skill position players in favorable one-on-one matchups, or like with the ball in their hand facing the end zone you're going to instead of facing your quarterback. There's just so much stuff that you can do. Like his play action rates are down, his pre-snap motion rates are down. He moved Jamar Chase into the slot a little bit. Yay. We've been waiting for that for 3 years. So he finally did that, but like there's just not a lot to like here. As far as the Chiefs, like the one, I like the Rashee Rice call, but I'll also give a shout to Isaiah Pacheco. Probably not going to see a ton of ownership. He's priced right around Kyren Williams, so probably not going to see a ton of ownership. And this is like this screams like I'm going to stomp the ground to death on my way to 150 yards and 2 scores type game for him.
Yeah, Bengals run defense got absolutely steamrolled last week by the Patriots and Ramondre. Ramondre, better player than Pacheco. Mark, any concern over Samaje? Only played a handful of snaps, got 2 targets. He just missed out on a touchdown, but I have to think we see a little more Pirine, right? Like moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, and like even if you directly compare him to Jerick McKinnon was like, even in the year where he scored the 12 touchdowns, something stupid, I forget, like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Even that year, like he was purely a clear passing down back and red zone weapon. So that doesn't really bother me too much for a back like Pacheco, who has breakaway speed, who's still going to see goal line stuff. We know like the Chiefs are always going to have a high red zone pass rate. But yeah, like Pirine is there. That does hurt like the top end side of the range of outcomes, but it more so hurts Pacheco's weekly floor because we're not expecting him to fill that clear passing down role. So the ceiling is still intact, but that doesn't the floor doesn't really matter to us in DFS. We're kind of just worried about the ceiling there with Pacheco.
Yeah, we're Ricky Bobby, baby. You're either first or last, Jake.
Yeah.
DK priced up Xavier Worthy. At least they got that one right this week, 6,100. What do you think about these Chiefs? And Andre Yoshivas is only 3,800, ran the most routes on the Bengals last week. Probably should be a little more expensive. He's going to catch a ton of ownership, I think, again this week as a value. But yeah, man, fun game. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I would imagine ownership concentrates a little bit more on those Rams values, which will keep the Yoshi ownership down just a tad, probably 10 to 14% ish. I certainly prefer him to a guy like Alan Lazard, but I'm not particularly eager to play him. Kansas City side, I think, is pretty interesting. I was a bit surprised to see Mahomes projecting for such high ownership this week, 10 to 14% type range. And I think if you're going to play Mahomes, and honestly, I want to, because Cincinnati runs so much single high. They played the second most single high of any team that played the Chiefs last season. Top 8 rates both last week and last season. On the whole, Mahomes saw a 22% boost to his fantasy points per dropback and averaged a full more yard in his ADOT against single high. So I think the way that you play this is, if you're stacking Mahomes, you pair him with Rashee Rice, you pair him with Travis Kelce. I would prefer Rice. Then you also work in some Xavier Worthy. If Mahomes is going deep against single high, Xavier Worthy is going to be the biggest beneficiary, and he's way too expensive relative to his projection. He's not going to pull any ownership, because if you're running a 150 set in an optimizer, you are going to have to apply a huge boost to Xavier Worthy to get him to show up in any lineups. He's just not projecting well at all, but we know the upside's there.
Yeah, and we have bulletin board material. Cam Taylor-Britt opened his mouth and said Xavier Worthy is just, he's just fast. He doesn't do anything else. Like, bro, why are you poking Patrick Mahomes? Why? Why would you do this?
Yeah. First play from scrimmage, they're designing a deep shot.
Bro, the Bengals, the amount of shit that the Bengals talk versus the amount that they should actually talk is like massively inversely correlated.
They talk shit like they actually won the 2021 Super Bowl.
Can we beat the Chiefs once, please, before you guys talk shit, please? Like, God. Guys, great show. This was awesome. Going to hit a question real quick from Matt. Best sub 3K defense on DK. Not sub 3K. They're exactly 3K. Seattle is my favorite defensive play this week. Sub 3K, I do like Giants a little bit. Pass rush is okay. Jaden Daniels is probably going to be a little mistake prone early in his career. Jake, do you have any sub 3K defenses on DK here before we get out of here?
I would generally push people toward the projections, especially for defense. I think the projections do a better job at capturing nuance than my brain ever could. And I think Chris Wecht also does a fantastic job with those. So that's generally my answer for defense questions, as much as people tend to hate that. No,
it's the truth. Just follow the projections. I mean, I'm trying to project pressure and stuff like that, but definitely the truth. Gentlemen, great show. For Mark, for Jake, for Tom Tipple behind the glass here. This has been week 2 cashing points. If we don't take down some tournaments, win all the money this week, you guys will, and we will see you at the top of the leaderboards.
What?
Why are you shaking your head?
You're welcome.